this is Shelly and Jason with another kitchen convo, and tonight we wanted to talk about an email that I received this week from a wife. She has recently received a disclosure from her husband and is reeling and is in a ton of pain.
Do you know how recent? Like within the last couple of weeks kind of thing?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't remember. And her question to me and what she needs help with is she wants to process all the details that her husband has given her, you know, in the disclosure. She wants to process that with him. She has a lot of questions. She's feeling a ton of pain inside and feels like she needs to get that out. Her husband does a great job in counseling, working with her, but once they leave the office, he kind of goes back to, a different mode, his old self probably. So it got me thinking, and I feel like there is one of the really hard things about this process is there's such a dichotomy early on between when I was given all these details and all this information, and I need to process it and make sense of it all. But for a husband that has been engaging in this behavior and they've taken a huge leap of faith by saying like, hey, here's what's going on,
here's
I'm going
the
to give you the
truth.
truth.
Yeah.
But they're not emotionally in a place initially where they can do a lot of engaging that hard stuff and sitting with their wife. Right. I mean, we're 11 years in and
it's still hard.
Right. We do it better, but it's still a challenge.
Yeah, and I think it's like when we talked earlier, for so many guys, it's like being a kid in a man's body. Developmentally, we're not there in that place to be able to handle all of that intensity.
Exactly. It's like for a wife's needs to be met in the first year or two, the husband really should be about 5 years along in his process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like
So what do you do? That's just a really hard thing.
Yeah.
So I want to know from your perspective, what did you do? And what do you tell your clients to do? What do you tell your husbands to do to help the wife be able to ask questions and process? And then we can go from there.
Okay. I just thought of something as you were talking about that, as you were framing that up. For a lot of guys, I think, and this was definitely true for me, talking in the office means if you get out of control, the counselor is going to mediate. Right. Like that third party is going to calm you down and not let you totally thrash me. So getting home and being willing to open up that conversation without a third party there feels really scary.
Yeah, unsafe.
There's
safety in the counseling office.
Yeah. Which is also, I think it's important to say, like for me, that was still hiding. It's still hiding.
Okay.
I wasn't willing to receive your pain on my own accord. I was going to make sure that there was a cap on it. Right? So that was still hiding.
Yeah.
When you say what did I do? How did that work? One of the things we talk about is creating the space. And so I tell husbands in my office, you have to create the space. You got to create a safe container for your wife to share her pain. And in that container, be a willing recipient of it. So, every night after the dinner's done, the kids are in bed, be the first one to say, hey, let's talk. And share with me what you feel today. Share with me what you were triggered by today. Share with me how you feel about me today and what I've done. And guys, when I say it in my office, they're like, you're crazy. What you're asking me to give her the gun and then stand in the firing line.
Right.
And that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like a lot of times. And as we're talking about that, I don't remember doing that much. I feel like you just launched into it most of the time.
Totally.
I mean, I feel like there were times it got to the point where after I learned, after counseling, when we got in our separate cars to drive home, I would try to be the first one to call to say, okay, what'd you think?
Yeah.
How do you feel? Right? And it was vulnerable. It was like, oh gosh, really, I'm about to do this. I mean, it's hard,
Yeah.
I don't know, I'll stop there.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say, I think something that's been a huge part of my process is finding my voice. And it is really scary for a wife to, I already felt so hurt and so vulnerable and didn't have any safety. So then for me to be like, hey, I need to talk to you about this really hard stuff. I mean, if you were like, no, I'm not going to, I mean, that's even more rejection.
Which I did the first round.
Sure, yeah. So I just want to encourage wives that I get that it is so hard to ask for what you need, but this is the beginning of, it was for me, learning how to use my voice and how to ask for what I need. And I really did feel voiceless. And a lot of times for wives, that has happened in their marriage. They've lost their voice in their marriage because of this addiction. But even I think for a lot of women as little girls, we lose our voice. And so I think this process and what we're talking about, that dichotomy between I need you to hear me and you not in a place to hear me, I think that has been one of the beautiful things that has come out of this, is that now it is easier for me to use my voice and to ask for what I need. It is also an active process. It's still something that I have to work on.
For sure. And it's still an active process to be a willing recipient. You know, I mean, let's go back all the way to, I don't know, last night when you didn't know that was coming? When you said, hey, I need to talk to you about your response about whatever it was we were talking about. And you said, gosh, that response felt like old Jason. And it seemed arrogant and prideful. And it's like, I was laying there listening to you say this, and like, there's that little part of my brain, 11 years later, there's that little part of my brain going, oh, come on, really? Really, we have to have this guy? And then quickly that gets, pushed out and pushed to the side by, no, she has a right to say that. You need to respect her voice. And the truth is, most of the time when you say that stuff, you're right. Right? So, I mean, what face do I have to save by not listening to it, Yeah. So that's still an active process of listening as well as using your voice. Right. Before we run out of time, one other quick thing I want to say is about grieving. And we talked about this on a video before. I try to help guys understand that when wives are going through all that questioning and the details and all those questions that are rhetorical and unanswerable and
no good answer.
Right, no good answer.
No answer will satisfy us. But we still want an answer.
But we still want an answer.
So we can not shoot it down.
I think guys need to hear you say that. Like, sometimes you just wanted an answer to shoot down.
Yeah.
Because guys will say, I feel like she's just going to shoot me down. You're right.
Yes.
She is.
Yes.
And your humble receipt of that is part of the process, right?
Yeah.
So what was I going to say? Darn.
Grieving process.
So in the grieving process, I just try to help guys understand that all those questions is grieving. And shutting that down, being defensive, being prideful and arrogant, getting hung up on the technicalities, all of that stuff, it shuts down the grieving process. So whenever that happens, it's like a wife is starting to unload all that stuff, and then it gets shut down. All that stuff just gets packed into a vault. And so that accumulates. And then each time the process starts, it's like the floodgates seem to open and more of that stuff comes. And it was hard for me to understand, and I think it's hard for other guys to understand in my office. We've got to let her get that stuff out. We're not advocating physical violence.
Right.
If she throws heavy things, duck, but she has to be able to get that stuff out and ask those questions.
Yes.
And if you're having trouble doing that, what you may need to do, and this is a process of flexing that muscle and getting stronger, is listen and be humble and listen. And when you reach max, you may need to take a little break.
Yeah.
That pisses a lot of wives off, because most of the time when a husband says I'm taking a break, he shuts her down, leaves, and doesn't pick back up the conversation.
Okay. So how should it look? When you're ready for a break, what should the verbiage?
Something to the effect of, I'm maxed out, I want to hear you, I want to listen, I want to process this stuff.
Okay.
But I'm about to spout off and pop off and say hurtful things, and I just don't want to keep effing the whole process up. So can I just have a few minutes? And maybe that means I need to go breathe. Maybe that means I walk around the block. Maybe that means I call one of my guys and say, I'm right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But to say, I'm tired of hurting you. I don't want to do this anymore. Man, that takes me back. God, it's so hard. But to be able to say, like, I'm tired of hurting you. I've hurt you with all the crap I've done, and now I can't even listen to your pain without hurting you. So just let me take a break and come back. And in a few minutes, come back. Right? I mean, that's, for so many wives, they might be pissed when you walk away, but a few minutes later, when you come back and grab her hand and look her in the eyes and say, let's go. Tell me what's going on. That's going to go a long, long way.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think for a wife, as you're talking, what's so important, it's okay for you to ask for what you need. I need a break. But I also think for a wife to feel safe in that, it's for you to say, and we will pick this back up in X amount of time, whether it's, you know what I mean, 2 hours, 5 minutes from now. But knowing that it's not, that I still will get a chance to ask more questions and to process with you at this later time.
I think that's a whole video in itself, because that gets so messy and guys use that so manipulatively, and wives feel so hurt by that, because that's still a power play on his part, and it still feels like taking the control away from her sometimes.
Yeah.
That's like a whole video in itself.
So one more thing, and then we do need to stop.
Okay.
I want to make sure that we address, is the wife, like when I needed to ask questions and just process my pain with you, I want to be really clear, is that okay for me to do that with you?
Yeah.
And is there a time limit for how long that I can, you know, how often, and I don't mean how long like in one sitting, but
Right. I mean, I think, you know, you said in a video before that at some point early on you thought having all the data and facts and having all the knowledge would help you get over it. And then you realized, yeah, that stuff's important, but that's not going to fix it. That's not going to make the pain
it
go
wouldn't
away.
like quench. I would never completely understand.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I thought, at one point I thought, if I just get all the details, I can make sense of this.
Right. And so I think the answer is there's always an open door policy. You can always ask questions as long as you need to ask questions. And it's also important for some wives to come to the point of realizing going over those details yet again probably isn't going to satisfy them. It's not going to quench that feeling.
Right.
And at that point, it's not about those details. It's about her husband receiving her heart right where she is.
Totally. Yes. And I think that, and that's what I just want to be really clear, that it is so important for us wives to be able to process the pain. At some point, the details do start to go away, but there's a sweetness when we can always process our pain with our husband, and that you'll receive us in that. That's one of the sweet blessings that's come out of this. And so I think that's so important.
For sure.
And I just want to validate wives out there that desire for that to be the case.
Yeah.
So.
Oh gosh, that's a long video. Okay, we're gonna stop there. Maybe we'll do another one to say more about this.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thank
tuning in.
you. Bye.